Welcome back to the Three Man Weave College Basketball Podcast, bringing you all kinds of hoops chatter here on a fine Friday morning or whenever you are listening to this. I'm Jim Root, your host for the week, joined by my cohorts, my colleagues, my friends, Matt Cox and Kai McEwen. Fellas, are we ready to talk hoops? We are inching closer and closer to Selection Sunday. Kai, our favorite day, one of our
Mm.
favorite days of the year. Are you ready?
I'm so ready, Jim. Get February out of here. February is the worst month in the world. I think Garfield said it was the Monday of months, and he's right. He's right, Jim. February's awful. Get it out of here. March, it's around the corner. I can't wait.
The Monday of months. I said to you guys recently that it's like the 3 to 5 a.m. of a
Horrible.
month of a calendar or of a daytime clock. Matthew, you're always awake from 3 to 5 a.m. You're a new dad, so how are you doing?
Good. Yeah. 4:30 alarm this morning. Jimbo Kai Garfield, one of his many wise yogiisms of sorts. So yeah, I,
Yes.
I agree with him. He's a smart,
Cat.
smart kitty cat. So good for him.
Smart,
I agree.
smart
Yeah,
kitty.
February sucks. And I think we got kind of teased in Chicago with like the deceptively warm December and January. Now February's like, oh, here it is.
Yeah, it's
Floods.
smacking us in the face right now, unfortunately, but we're gonna battle through, and we got a lot of hoops to talk about. We got a standard episode here during the season. Of course, we're going to talk about Mizzou a lot because Kai and I are wired, but we've got a Roots Roundup, little news and notes from the past week. We've saw that highlighting some of the big games and performances and teams that have trended up over the past 7 days. Three Men Thoughts, which is our musings. We might drag BPI during that portion of the program. So if you
Yes.
want to hear that, stick around. Some quick weekend previews. As a reminder, we do a Saturday morning best bet show on this very YouTube channel that we are currently streaming live on. So if you want more detailed Saturday stuff, check that out, 10 a.m. Central on Saturday. And lastly, we will have some quick reviews of the podcast. Quick self-promotion. Shout out to Jay Pitty, aka Joe Paskov, the composer of our wonderful intro music. Follow us on Twitter at 3MW_CDB and Instagram at the same handle. Subscribe to the pod on iTunes, Spotify, Amazon, wherever you get your pods, and leave us reviews. That certainly helps us. And as mentioned, we will go through the Apple reviews that are left. Feel free to use it as a mailbag of sorts, ask a question. We are happy to answer. We'll do that at the end of the pod. Subscribe on YouTube. Get on there and hit the like button if you happen to be watching. That's always helpful as well. And join the Discord, the Burner Ball Discord. We work with Trilly Donovan there. Great hoops community where we're talking coaching carousel. We're talking daily betting. We've got some film stuff in there being broken down. A constant AMA if you're just curious about, man, why is this team rolling over and dying right now? That's where we're at. All kinds of interaction. Great community. $6 a month. Get in there ASAP. The link is in the description of this video and podcast. All right, fellas, that's it. Let's get into Roots Roundup. But before we do, Matthew, a quick plug to a wonderful sponsor that has stuck with us for years now, CBB Analytics, a great data website. Just a lot of information and easy to access information on their site.
That's right, Jim. CBB Analytics, the holy grail of college basketball advanced statistics, kind of giving you a little bit of everything from many sites out there that you may already use and a lot of stuff you may not already be using. Coaches, fans, media members, especially. Talked to Nick. He said they're doing a lot of work now with broadcast teams, ESPN, using that new kind of player search query tool to, post last time this player did this or last time this team did this. You can get all that access as well. Sign up today for the promo code WEAVE, WEAVE, for a $40 off subscription. And coaches, again, highlight the NIL prediction model, the NIL kind of quasi database that he has built, trying to help you budget as you build rosters for next season. Already starting to see some portal whispers and kind of premature entries via the Discord channel. That is a 24/7, 365 job now, I would assume, player evaluation and analysis. So reach out to us if you want to get access to that. Again, the other thing I wanted to mention that we'll talk about this throughout the program. I have a couple trivia nuggets here, but the all-in-one encompassing metric from CB Analytics, kind of their version of PER, some new clutch statistics, and then again more advanced on-off data has been rolling out as well. So yeah, just a smorgasbord of good nuggets, Jimbo. I'm still drinking from the fire hose. I feel like every week I find something new on the site that I hadn't discovered before. So check it out.
Yeah, find what works for you, the tools that are valuable for you on there because there are a ton of different things, shot charts, on-off data, etc. CBB Analytics, check it out. Okay, news, fellas, in the coaching world. We'll start in Philly, the city of brotherly love, the reigning Super Bowl champions. Well, Sal's Fran Dunphy is retiring after this year, a pillar in the coaching world there. He's now coached at half of the big six, the Philly five, three of them. Kai, the search for a coach last time when Dunphy was hired was rough,
Mhm.
not pretty for the Explorers. Dunphy basically came out of retirement to try to lift that program and get it on more stable ground. He will be missed as a fixture, and you interviewed him a couple times for the Almanac. How are you going to feel with Fran Dunphy finally sailing off into the sunset?
Jim, he's a great coach, beloved by his players, and he's had a great career. He's 76 years old. I probably would have guessed that, to be honest. But yeah, LaSalle's going to be in trouble with finding a new coach. It hasn't had since what's his name, John Giannini, solid coach back in the day,
Dr. John.
Dr.
Dr.
John.
John.
Uh, since him, it's kind of been meh for LaSalle. Even under Fran, he really couldn't get it going, and not his fault. I mean, they have no NIL. I know he was not a transfer portal guy, as it was clear from his past rosters, but the sport will miss him. He's a Hall of Famer.
Absolutely. All right. The other coaching news. Tom Izzo passed Bob Knight for I'm going Bob Knight instead of Bobby Knight for most wins in Big Ten history. His 354th. Matthias, you are an IU grad. Are you sad to see this happen? To see IU lose such an illustrious honor?
Yeah, tough to see, Jim. I can tell you the highlight for attending IU home games for the first year of my tenure there, which was the first year Crean was there. We were terrible, but the pregame hype video that crescendos into the Bob Knight moment, and the crowd goes absolutely ballistic. That was sort of my indoctrination into the Bob Knight experience at IU. So yeah, sorry, tangent not related to the point here, but just
No,
kind of
we
made me
love
think
it.
of that.
Us. Ah.
Congrats to Mr. Izzo. He is a true lifer, a grinder, a basketball guy through and through. Speaking of tough, Matthew, Brad Stevens says, "No, thank you. I am not a candidate. IU, go away. You made me say no. I said no." And there you have it. Now the search can actually move on to realistic candidates.
I agree. And who are they, Jim? Maybe we'll see a sneak peek at one of the candidates coaching against Mr. Izzo tonight, tomorrow. It's tonight, right? Yeah, Friday. If you're listening
Tonight,
to
if you're
this,
referring to
yes,
Michigan, yes.
Michigan State.
Yeah.
Yes,
Will
Dusty May, former
Dustin
Bob
May,
Knight student manager. So we'll see. Yes,
or will it be Chris Beard, Matthew? I hear that's a rumor.
I find myself somewhat unenthused by the Chris Beard stuff, and I don't know why. I have no good reason for that. I just feel like I'm just not as like excited about that, even though it's probably objectively a more proven hire than Dusty May
Yeah, he's a
guy.
good ball coach, but yeah, maybe not the upside or the
They're all
allure of
better
the
than Woody.
unknown.
Let's just be honest. It doesn't matter at this
Baggage,
point.
for being honest, a little baggage there.
A little baggage, just a
Little
No, but
baggage.
you
little
leave the
baggage.
baggage at the place that takes you first off. So all the
Uh-huh.
baggage will be left at Ole Miss. So
It's already
Oxford
left at
has the
Texas.
baggage.
It's already
It
at
comes to
Texas.
IU clean, clean as a whistle.
He's clean at Ole
Yeah, that
Miss.
too. Right. Yep.
Sure, that's
That's how it
that's
works.
something. We have some good rants this week from coaches. We'll mention Mick Cronin's a little bit later on, calling out his own fans. But John Calipari called his Arkansas players fragile,
Mm.
which felt a little harsh. The effort at Auburn this week was really strong. They defended up, kept that game close. Kai, they have the unenviable task of hosting our Missouri Tigers this weekend.
Oh.
A chance
Mhm.
to really stick a fork in these Razorbacks, although there's still like a coin flip to make the tournament. Any takeaways from you from this one? It was just kind of Cal being Cal.
This is Cal being Cal, coach speak. Yeah, I wonder who was coaching these guys for the past 26 games. Was it Cal? So why are they fragile, Cal? Hmm.
Just couldn't cultivate any toughness.
Hmm.
That's sad. Another really surprising rant, Matt, was from your Hoosier State, Micah Shrewsbury at Notre Dame. Really kind of lost it, like yelling at kind of clouds of like, "Oh, you guys want me fired? Oh, I'm still in this job." It was bizarre, and then the team backed it up by getting absolutely shellacked at home by SMU. It's not pretty right now, but it feels like a reinforcements are on the way type of situation. They've got a great recruiting class coming in. Obviously, not a program that can reload via the portal because of academic requirements, but you still believe in Shrewsbury, correct?
Yeah, I do. I mentioned this in our Discord. It's been a weird year at Notre Dame. It just has been. Like I know they lost to Laco and But it just don't completely fall off the rails, so you have some semblance of momentum going into next season with that recruiting class. Because like I mean, I remember like a month ago, it was like, holy cow, Shrewsbury, awesome, and recruiting class coming in, momentum, this, and that, and now it's just like, well, you're 5-10 in an ACC that's been like described as historically bad. So yeah, I think you need to kind of finish, maybe get one big win. I guess not really big win opportunities, kind in the ACC, but like if they just lose all the way out, it's like, holy cow, where are we with this situation? It's gonna be a very fascinating like off season tone
I'm,
with this
I'm a
program.
little confused to be honest. He says like, "Oh, you guys want me fired?" Blah blah blah. I was like, "Who's he hearing?" I've never heard anybody say that Shrewsbury's on the hot seat. They realize this is a definite rebuild. Let's not forget the Bray end of his career at Notre Dame. I think he's got plenty of room for wiggles and for improvement.
Yeah, they brought a ton back, but it's still like a lot of sophomores, juniors, and then one grad student who's been hurt, Alaco. So I'm not going to throw them under the bus here. And actually, Max knows bets in our chat mentioning the Rick Pitino speech that surfaced this week as for like a Vice documentary or something. It wasn't actually from a game this week, but it was halftime of him just like eviscerating his players. It's kind of fun to see Pitino behind the scenes of going after his guys, but it tells you like the relationship they have. Like, all right, that's a rallying cry, not a boy, he's belittling them type of thing. It's just a little old school Rick Pitino halftime tough love, Kai, and it got him going. They ended up winning after trailing at halftime in that game. Finally, Kai, you put this in the old outline. Dan
That's right.
Hurley releasing a book, and I cannot tell you how hard I will not read this. I am going to read this, not read this so hard, just nothing of relevance to me. Of
I
course he
just
is.
I don't know. It just really plays into his whole like arrogance thing. Like you're releasing a book. How old is he? How long has he been coach? He's releasing a book called Never Stop. It's like, all right, I get it. Two-time champ. It's like once you flip this switch, now you got to be holier than thou. I'm the best coach in the country. It's just this shtick, Jim. Again, good for the sport. Just one that I just can't really get behind all the time.
He clearly watches The Bear, Matthew, and he sees, oh, the Coach K book is making the rounds on
Yep.
a nationally hailed show, an award-winning show. I got to get something out there because I'm the best effing coach in the sport. It's just another eye roll,
I
another
will
eye
say
roll.
UConn, the Big or UConn especially, but Big East basketball is good theater. It really is. Like just the you get a lot of, I mean, all the Twitter spaces, the kind of subsects of fan diehard going at each other, and obviously it's all drummed up by the UConn love affair that is with this program, this team, even in a wake of, I guess, in the midst of a very turbulent season, for sure. I mean, like the Villanova game was like disaster to
Mhm.
a insane comeback, and then it's like, oh my god, it's just it's a fun, it's good for the sport, Kai. Good drama. It's high drama.
It would be just a little. I tweeted this would be a little funny if they missed the tournament. I'd find
I
it.
agree.
I'd find,
It's
it's not
kind
going to
of
happen now,
I'd
but
giggle.
it
I'd
would
laugh.
be. I'd giggle. I also at this point would laugh if they went to the Big 12 for football and just chased that. Like it would be bad for college basketball. It'd be a bummer, but I would have to laugh a little bit. Just like you're just like sacrificing everything you've gotten in basketball for chasing the almighty dollar. But all right, we move on. Quick injury mention in the Illinois world, where everything has been a roller coaster this year. You can't count on anything game to game. Morez Johnson, who is seemingly starting to play
Mhm.
consistent, broke his wrist after a crazy block against Michigan State, like a two-hand volleyball spike. Man, Kai, he was really starting to impress us, give them that presence inside, and now they've got to kind of reshuffle again as the whole team is also apparently suffering from illness again. I don't know
Yeah,
what is going on in Champaign, but they're always sick.
yeah. Daddy Brad Underwood. He told Greg Gard in the handshake line that we're not going to do the full handshakes. We're sick. Blah blah blah. Like we don't want to shake your hands. After, of course, playing a 40-minute game, when you're leaning on people and breathing on people, it's like
That's
the
so
COVID mask
dumb.
thing for basketball games. Like, what are we doing? I mean, a
We can play
handshake?
against you, but we can't shake your hands.
It's
What?
ridiculous. Still, yeah, Illinois. They're fine. Illinois fans are acting like the sky's falling. You're fine. You were never supposed to be a top 10 team this year. You never were. You're fine.
Get him, Kai. Get him.
You're
Hey, big one
fine.
against the
yeah.
Dukies at
I
Madison
backed
Square
off.
Garden this weekend.
Yeah, I pulled. I'm pulling all punches the rest of the year in Illinois. So,
Hey,
uh,
speaking of Illinois, they also put themselves in the headlines for the wrong reasons here The Terrence Shannon retirement jersey number banner, retiring his jersey, but not his
It's an
number, I think is
honor.
what
It's
it
saying
was.
it's an honoring his jersey is what they call it, I think, Jim.
Yeah, okay. Well, they revealed it upside down as they went to hang it in the rafters. Just a complete insane
And still brought
screw
it
up.
up.
Yeah, I don't know how that happens, how you manage to do that. But credit to Terrence Shannon for kind of spinning it and releasing its shirt with like, if it's upside down, it's like some rallying quote cry, and the money's going to charity. So, Kai, that is the best kind of thing we can ask for out of a goofy situation like this.
Yeah, and I posed the question, Jim, to Discord for the Illinois fans in there. I said, why are we honoring Shannon's number? He played for Illinois for 2 years, I think. So they do it for all Americans, Big Ten Player of the Year and National Player of the Year. They made an exception for Shannon because they believe he would have been an All-American if he wasn't under that legal thing that happened that ended up being dropped. So interesting. Interesting.
Yeah, I'd say that
Yeah.
is good for Shannon. Good for they needed something to celebrate with up and down on the court. Reddit stat of the day, Kai. I saw this from user Moss the Mac. Typically, you're the Reddit stat of the day. Out of the day.
How
Excuse
dare
me.
you?
Wow.
How dare
Freudian, huh? I guess. Um, typically, you're the curator. I had to jump on this one, though, because I liked it. New Orleans was the first tourney-eligible team eliminated from national championship contention. They cannot make the Southland tournament and thus cannot make a run to San Antonio, where the Final Four is this year. Eastern Illinois, Western Illinois, and Cal State Fullerton also eliminated. This is just your reminder for when people complain about expanding the field,
you? Yeah.
as everyone's technically in, or almost everyone. You just got to win a couple extra games, not just six in March. You got to win games before that. All right, that is it, fellas, for Roots Roundup. We will now move into We've Saw That. Talking games, highlights from the past week, big performances. We'll start, Matthew, with the IBOB, the Iron Bowl of basketball on the Plains last Saturday. I guess technically on the Plains. I think that's more Auburn, but it counts. At Alabama, right after these two teams were revealed as the top two overall seeds by the NCAA Tournament Selection Committee. Auburn goes to Alabama, more or less controls the game start to finish. Alabama did make some runs there, but it was a super fun game with shot making, etc. Did this reassert Auburn as the number one team for you, Matt? Or are you still going to war with your Blue Devils?
Yeah, I think it's Duke. I mean, Auburn's offense has not looked as invincible. I mentioned this I think we talked about it last week. I sensed Broom's ankle, since he came back from that ankle, he's still been awesome. Let's be clear. He has not been as dominant as like his percentages have dropped a little bit. His finishing's been a little bit dicey. He's still an awesome passer. He's an awesome rim protector. But I just never believed that Auburn was the best offense in the history of Ken Palm's college basketball. So I think there's a little bit of regression, and I'm not surprised by that. They're the second best team, Jim. They're very, very, very good. They're not the best team.
Only the fifth best offense in league play. A little surprising.
They played Duke. Yeah, Duke beat them this year, Matt. So you can have that lane.
It was at home. It was at home.
Yeah,
I'm
at
not
home.
going to get Duke. Yeah.
Auburn 14 Q1 wins this year. No one else has more than 8. They are just running away with the top seed, Jim.
Yeah, best resume is clearly the Tigers. You get a road win like this after already being the number one overall seed. Yeah, that's going to happen. I do like that at least a couple Duke fans chirped me at some point on Twitter, like, if only we had these two teams playing head to head to see who's better. I was like, well, sorry to hear that Clemson's better than you based on your own dumb logic. So one game on the road tells you who's better. Stop it. Don't do that. Don't be like that, folks. Use your brains. We expect that out of you. Some other teams that had huge weeks, Kai. Here is where we gloat about our Tigers. How about Mizzou? Big 20-point win
Mizzou?
at Georgia, clobbered them in the second half. And then they beat Alabama at home, led wire to wire, basically double digits the entire time, got up 12-0, and it got to 6 once in the second half, and then again in the final minute. But Mizzou did slam the door on the Tide, and oh boy, the Tigers are rolling, Kai. I can't believe it.
This team's really good, Jim. It's the best team since 2012, our senior year in college, when we didn't play in the tournament. No one remembers what even happened in the tournament that year. It's a very fun team to watch. They're they're deep, blah, 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 blah. What's our seed in the tournament? It's a good question, Jim. We're 13th in KenPom. We're 9th in Bart Torvik. We're 32nd in the BPI. The BPI is the worst metric in the history of the world. I don't know why we include it. And Jim, you mentioned that others pointed out on Twitter, including Kevin Sweeney, I believe,
Yeah, I think Kerry Miller
and
initially
Kerry
called
Miller.
attention to it.
They include preseason rankings still in this metric. That sucks already. I mean, that's absolutely asinine. I can't believe this is actually a metric used by the committee.
Yeah, get it off the team sheet if you're still including preseason 30 games into the year and that's influencing where teams are seated. It makes no sense. Like, oh, we thought Mizzou was going to be bad, so we can ignore that they are good and influence them as being outside the top 30.
Mm-hmm.
I think Michigan's still really low because they won 7 games last year. It just has not properly taken into account the current team's performance, and that should be all that matters, Matthew. That should be what matters when you're selecting and seeding a field. This metric is completely broken. It's awful. Last year it was way off on like every team that plays on Fox, which was a fun conspiracy theory. Like, oh, ESPN owns this. It has almost never made sense, and it was fueling their terrible bubble watch bracket projections, where it had like
Mm-hmm.
UNC is a 90% chance to make it, Mizzou is a coin flip. Like it doesn't work. Get it off the team sheet, Matthew. That's my hammer point.
Yeah, agree. We shouldn't have prior. I know Ken Pom has priors in his predictions throughout the year, but they erode away as the year progresses.
I think almost
And
none
just
right now, right?
and I think at this point in the year, it's basically just like a right whatever you were at the beginning of the season. I know college football. Some people argue that priors have more relevance as you go deeper in the year. I think college basketball, there's enough games where we don't really need that. And also, again, we're not predicting the winners of these games. It's trying to actually assess who is most deserving based on what we know from when the season began and actually transpired.
And
So
also,
it
it's
doesn't.
really hard to get preseason predictions right these days with the transfer portal and all that stuff. I mean, a couple other examples: Kansas 24-25 and other metrics, 11 BPI because I'm sure they're ranked high in the preseason. Wisconsin 7-10 and other metrics, 18 in BPI. It's like you see these discrepancies up and down, teams that are surprising one way or the other.
Yeah, and I'd be okay if it was like just a different methodology of measuring performance, but if it's fully preseason, like that's just so dumb. That doesn't make any sense for actually evaluating current teams when you have this many games. Stop it. And yeah, as Kai mentioned, the uncertainty of projections. We don't know that it's better to include preseason in this current era. You have no evidence. You have no data for that. It's new. It's a new world. Let's be better. All right, they've got Bartorvik on there. They've got wins above bubble on there. They're making steps in the right direction. Hopefully, they will do away with BPI soon and figure out a different metric to replace it with. I don't know. Maybe Haslametrics. Maybe Evan Mia. Put something else on there that's better at it. Okay, we move on from Mizzou, Michigan State. And you know what? I'm going to pair Michigan State and Wisconsin guys because they basically just traded turns like shoving Illinois and Purdue back and forth. Wisconsin won at Purdue, then scorched Illinois at home. Michigan State won at Illinois, beat Purdue at home. The Big Ten race is a big game tonight, Friday, as we are recording this, Michigan State at Michigan. But Kai, who has impressed you more of the Michigan State-Wisconsin duo?
Gosh, good question. Well, I mean, it's Wisconsin, I guess. Seventh in KenPom now. They're the top Big Ten team. No one saw this coming in the preseason. I thought they would be pretty solid because it's a great program, of course. But John Tanji turning into an All-American caliber player. Yeah, Jim, you mentioned in the outline 31 points per game across these 2 games. Yeah, that's pretty good. Blackwell being a do everything wing. They fit really well together. Their offense is humming. They're playing faster than they ever have. I think even like Bo Ryan's era. So it's been like years and like decades they've played this fast. Impressive team. They're the more impressive team right now.
Yeah, these are I believe Mizzou and Wisconsin, if I can count, the only 2 top 25 teams that are in the top 25 of Haslametrics momentum metric. So, most of these other teams that are high in that metric are generally bad teams that have much higher upside for playing better. Mizzou and Wisconsin are really good, but playing like great right now. The Alabama game was like, I think Mizzou stamped as like, I almost put them in the Tennessee tier of the SEC, like the tier 2 of SEC teams, like just below Auburn. I'm not sure who's in that tier.
Do it.
I think.
Do it, Matt.
What?
Since January 1st, they're top 5 team in the country. Do it.
I think I'm doing it. So if tier 1 in SEC is Auburn and Florida, whoever is in tier 2, Mizzou is in that tier. You can debate who is in there, but I think Mizzou's in that tier.
I'm starting to in a national sense. I'm kind of warming up to Wisconsin. Like the pace, the space, threes. They've got a bunch of different killers on the perimeter with Tanjay Klesmit and Blackwell. Defensive fortitude inside with Crowell, especially. Winter's been decent. Like I think I'm on board with that team making a run. It's not your same old Badgers, so I want to give them some actual credit here. Other teams with big weeks. Houston, they swept the Arizona trip to take a stranglehold on the Big 12 title race. They now have the tiebreak over Arizona and up 2 games. So Cougars looking really, really good. They've only lost once since the turn of the calendar, and it was an overtime to Texas Tech. Mississippi State won at Ole Miss, beat Texas A&M at home. They had kind of
Huge.
been struggling a little relative to some of the other like SEC lock caliber teams, and now, I mean, like they are going to have 9 teams on the top 6 lines. It's ridiculous. The conference is completely loaded. We'll talk about it a little bit in one of my 3-man thoughts. Good for the Bulldogs. And Matthew, your Lobos seized control of the Mountain West. They swept Utah State, took care of them at home. They did end up losing at Boise in the follow-up game, but they are still up a game with the tiebreak over the Aggies. So Richard Pitino's squad looking good.
Yeah, imagine if they had JT Toppin, as I've said before.
And John Tanjay.
And John Tanjay, who they was on
Committed
the
there.
roster for a week or something, right? After he went
Yeah.
Mizzou to New Mexico to Wisconsin, or what
Yeah,
was the
Wisconsin kind of
path?
poached him. I
On his
think.
way back to Detroit.
Yeah, okay. It's weird to think of Wisconsin. You think of like the Greg Gard, like would never do anything nefarious, but yeah, we did kind of hear that they came in and swooped him. Yeah, it's a good team. The league is actually better than I think people get credit for. I do think there are some like I think New Mexico and San Diego State can be second weekend NCAA tournament teams. I think it's probably a 1 bid league. I don't think they're going to get 2, but I think those are both.
Oh, New Mexico's an at-large.
Or sorry,
team.
I think it's a 2 or 3 bid. It's not like a 4 bid league, but I do think both those teams are capable of making runs. Boise, now we know Boise's kind of been a tournament pumpkin. Utah State's got some
They're at-large
weird.
too.
Yeah, I mean, I think they have some weird funkiness to them. I don't think they're actually a threat to go. I only think New Mexico and the Aztecs are truly like second weekend threats, but like legitimate threats.
Yeah, I think they have 3
Quick
at-large
question.
teams right now. If we went by bracket matrix,
Quick question for you, Matt. When was the last time New Mexico basketball made second weekend?
It's been a while. Laid an absolute egg last year against Clemson. So bad.
Would you believe it if I told you it was 1974?
I would not
Oh,
have guessed
yeah.
that, Jim.
Yeah, they haven't won a game in the tournament since 2012, so they're like Mizzou, maybe the best version since then. But yeah, last year everybody was hyping them up. They were favored over 6 seed Clemson, and as Matt said, latest thinker. We'll see if they can top that this year. It's a more consistent team without it being based on Mashburn and House. So perhaps this is the year for the Lobos. Utah and TCU sort of got back in the bubble picture with with big sweeps. TCU beat Texas Tech. Utah swept the Kansas schools. So keep an eye on those teams. We're registering you, Craig Smith and Jamie Dixon. We are aware of you. We see you. We'll monitor you going forward. And yeah, the Big Ten's like the only title race that has drama right now. Houston, Duke, St. John's, Auburn are all like minus 1,000 or better to win their conferences. It's kind of a bummer with 3 weeks left in the regular season. But Kai, I hope selfishly that all of those play out that
we're
way.
okay with that. We're fine with that.
Yep, we are super fine with that. No complaints here. Just letting the people know.
Conference titles just mean so little to me now. They didn't mean much
you're
before.
a
They mean
Duke-
even less
you're a
now.
Duke guy.
Yeah, we never
the
won with
imbalanced
Coach K, so we
schedules.
decided it doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter exactly. The ACC tournament, Jim. The
Why
imbalanced
doesn't the Big
schedules.
East matter to you?
The Big East. That's one that does still feel like it has some relevance, but still, it doesn't mean anything. It doesn't.
Why?
It just
Oh,
doesn't.
I think
True
it
double
means-
round robin
I think it means a lot.
is a bad
Okay.
Matt take.
That's great. It doesn't mean anything to most of these teams. It's your at large, or you in the tournament, who you beat or you beat them. It doesn't. Your
Conference
regular
title-
season turn doesn't matter.
I
It doesn't
disagree
matter.
so hard. I bet it means a lot to these teams, a ton to these teams.
I bet it means something. It doesn't mean as much as I think it used to, and I don't think you're rewarded for. I do like how college football at least upholds some. There's an incentive to win your conference, as it's sort of. I know it's imbalanced and flawed in that
Super
regard, but I
balanced
do
guys
like
in
that
football,
there's.
yeah.
No, but that's not my point. That's not my point. My point is that there's a reward incentive to winning your conference. In college basketball, there is literally nothing
Yeah,
for that.
except for
There's nothing.
better seeding in the conference tournament. Yeah,
Great. Who cares? I mean, half these teams would rather probably go away first or second round in the SEC tournament. Like, who wants to go play 5 games in the SEC tournament and then go turn around and play 3 days later? Like, that's just, you'd rather just probably sit and rest at that point. I don't know.
competitors.
Annoying.
Competitors.
Level of
Matt
compete. The
doesn't
kids
have the
these days are too
juices, man.
soft.
Doesn't have the juices anymore. It's too bad. Okay, quick individual mention. JT Toppin had his 40-point game last week, but then he followed it up with another 30 and 10 game, and he is the first Big 12 player with 30 and 10 in back-to-back games since Blake Griffin in 2009. Pretty
Hmm.
good player.
Hmm.
Old Blake Griffin, number one overall pick. As Matt mentioned, yeah, JT Toppin on this New Mexico team would be very interesting. It was never going to happen. He didn't stick around, but that's okay. The bad loss section, Kai, we gotta drag Kansas a little bit too. It is a true Mizzou
Finally.
pod. Losing at BYU is not bad. The manner in which Kansas lost at BYU, where they quit, completely rolled over, and just died. They were down by, I think, 38 was the biggest lead. It reminded me a little bit of the UCLA complete quit at Utah. I
Mhm.
think that was last year. I can't remember for sure if it was last year or 2 years ago. But they ended up rallying off that a little bit. But afterwards, Bill Self said, we can't be around each other. Like, we need to get away from each other. This team did not bond on this trip. Uh, Personalities in that locker room not going well together. Who could have guessed?
Yeah, it was a poor job, I guess, in the portal, Jim, is what I'll say for Kansas. I think people even said that at the time. I know there was some optimism, and of course the non ball knowers, Jim, were huge fans of getting Store and Mayo. We knew that wasn't going to work out very well. But yeah, 7 losses in the Big 12. They had 8 last year, so no longer a dominant Kansas team in the Big 12. I can't say I hate it. Hunter Dickinson, great individual player, doesn't seem like a winning team player with the evidence we have over 4 years now.
Yeah, he was on the best team he was on was as a freshman,
Hmm.
and he was, more of a complimentary guy. When you build around him, it doesn't seem to work quite as well. Matthew, any thoughts on the Jayhawks? Are they going to recover, or are they just basically playing out the string until they can reset next year with Darren Peterson, etc.?
Yeah, I guess they just, I mean, Self gonna do the mail it in and wait for next year type thing. I don't know. I thought the Badunga emergence and the Rylan Griffin shooting in the Iowa State game was like maybe a potential launching pad to a little bit of a second part of the season jolt, but it just kind of flatlined really quickly after. Like they got up for that game and then they get back to cruise control, and then they don't have the margin for error that they usually do with their, I would say, talent, but it's not jaw dropping talent. And obviously the fit issues have made that have expedited those or have exacerbated those issues.
Yep, got the old get right game against Oklahoma State. Going to be big favorites at Fog Allen. We'll see if they can kind of figure it out back home. But keeping an eye on you. Also keeping an eye on UConn because they just double blew it at Seton Hall last Saturday. Kai, we watched this game together and just could not believe it. Like the turnovers and bad decision making and almost kind of shaky play design with press break stuff. It was gross. Dan Hurley now 1-4 on the road at his alma mater, Seton Hall. Not what you'd expect considering the juggernaut UConn's been.
No, and they should have lost to Villanova too, Jim, to follow that up. Like, and if they did that, we'd be talking about UConn bubble, which is crazy to me from the preseason.
There was a point I'm saying that UConn game. I watched that start to finish. There was like, oh my god, UConn looks horrible, and like there was like just this feeling of restlessness. And I was like fast forwarding to this podcast. I was like, wow, UConn season off the rails. And but they completely ransacked Villanova. I don't know what Cal Neptune coached one of the worst halves of college basketball I've seen all year, and here we are. UConn's still kind of firmly in the mix, and we're not hitting the panic button yet.
Yeah, per Brendan Marks, who did the research on this, losing to Seton Hall, who was like 213th in Ken Palm at the time, it was basically tied for the worst loss by a reigning national champion in the Ken Palm era, the last like 25 plus years, almost 30 years. Coincidentally, the other one was UConn losing to Houston back when Houston was like garbage and outside the top 200.
Wow.
So thought that was kind of funny how far we've come as a sport that Houston is now your consistent top five team. UCLA scored 6 points in the final 7 minutes to blow it at home against Minnesota. That was really weird. This is when Mick Cronin went after the crowd, basically said like they're forcing us to do things wrong, or they're just waiting for us to do things wrong.
Ridiculous.
Yeah, silly. They went 5 of 15 from the free throw line. Mick, that is not the crowd's fault. That's players, but hey, he's always prone to blame the players too. It's not like a horrific loss they're gonna make the tournament, but just the style it happened and the Cronin aftermath was bizarre. Matt, you always talk about the American and how, for Memphis especially, how much it sucks to be in that league. You play road games against teams trying to beat you every single night, and almost all of them are quad three losses. And the Tigers lost at Wichita State last Sunday. It's just no upside. Like you win, great, you're supposed to. If you lose, it's like, yeah, these teams are capable of beating you, and now your seed is hurt for the NCAA tournament. It's a tough
Yeah,
world.
like Wichita State, like that's not a Q3 team. It's just not. They won 5 in a row. They sucked to start the year. They're clearly much better now. Um, yeah, I think they've built enough of a cushion, right? Like they're not going to actually fall out of
No, they're
the
fine.
mix. I think they're fine, right? Okay, yeah.
Yeah,
Their
yeah,
resume is
all the
really good.
resume stuff is
Yeah.
super strong. It's just, yeah, seeding continues to. Where do you put them? There's another like 8, 9 of Gonzaga, Baylor, UConn, Memphis. Like, have fun.
What
Number one
do
seeds.
what are this? So I saw a tweet about this. Maybe this was the San Francisco game. All right, they played at Chase Center on the way out to their Maui trip. Is that an away or is that a neutral? How are they counting that category? Right?
Some of these have been changing like year to year. I just saw St. John's Big East tournament games are going to count as neutral instead of home, like they had in the past, being played at Madison Square Garden. Like, I think there's almost arbitrary change. So I don't know for sure whether that one's counting as road or neutral, Matthew.
Interesting. Hmm.
Yeah, and unless the teams that are doing that, like, Auburn played Houston in Houston, but at the NBA arena, is that road or neutral? Like, how should these all be classified?
Yeah,
You like a
Gonzaga,
blanket sweeping rule, yeah.
Spokane, or yeah.
Gonzaga at the Spokane arena, should that be road or neutral? But if they play in Seattle, UConn going to Seattle, is that road or neutral? There's there's all these little tricks of the scheduling trade trying to
Yeah.
game the system.
If you play in
Uh,
the same city as your campus, play at the goddamn home campus. Don't play at Spokane Arena. If you're going to play at Seattle, I get that. That's a neutral site. Like it's more of a home for Gonzaga because of the travel, but I'm fine qualifying that as a neutral. I'm sure there's a return. There's a 1-1 or a home neutral and home away or neutral away exchange there. But that's we got to stop doing that stuff. That's dumb, stupid.
Coaching section. Actually, I just wanted to call out Virginia Tech for scoring 36 points in a loss at Virginia Tech or at Boston College. That's bad. Hokies, figure it out. Coaching section, Kai. We do watch Mizzou games with typically a super careful eye, so
We do.
that's where we get our takeaways.
Yeah, how about Dennis Gates, man? He did a couple of good things. Switching defenses late to zone, a couple possessions, threw off Alabama's rhythm as much as you can when you give up 90-something points. But great call late in the game. Also, Gates is incredible at deep ball out of bounds plays in the full court. He does it a lot, and it works pretty much every single time. He's not afraid to throw the long ball. I guess we have some quarterbacks on our team. Impressive, smart. More teams should probably do it. I don't think they're a little bit scared to
I
put that
agree.
risk
If you
in.
turn it over, it's at the other end of the
It's at
floor.
the
That's what I
other
think
end.
is that's
Exactly.
the brilliant part about that. It's a lower risk. It feels high risk. It's actually not that high risk.
Also, a couple
Yeah,
of great. Sorry, Jim. Go ahead.
Well, Creighton did this against St. John's pressure too.
Oh, yeah.
Some of the deep ball stuff. So I just wanted to tip the cap to McDermott as well.
And just some gorgeous sets in the half court. 2 straight back picks for Grill. Easy layups. Amaru, I think, got caught twice on it, which is both funny and also great for Mizzou. There's some good Twitter videos actually out there that show some of Gates' sets from that game. They're great. So, hey, if it's Gates, an assistant, I don't know. Mizzou's running good stuff right now. We're a good team.
Yes. Sorry, folks. We have 2 Mizzou grads on here, and they're having their best season in a decade and a half. We have to keep mentioning it. All right, moving into 3-man thoughts.
Thoughts.
Before we do, though, Kai, a quick read from our great loyal sponsor at Home Field. I was showing off the hockey hoodies to my hockey buddy last night. Just like, everybody should buy these. They're so cool.
They should. Yes, hockey hoodies are on the site now at homefieldapparel.com. If you don't know what Home Field is, what are you doing? They make the best premium collegiate apparel in the world for schools of all sizes. We're talking Power 5 schools like the Missouri Tigers and also D3 schools. Colorado State of Mines, or School of Mines comes to mind. They dig through years of archives of each school to understand the history, the fan base, make thoughtful designs on these t-shirts and hoodies and joggers and, heck, dad hats. The Tulane logos are incredible. The Hawaii logos. They keep adding new schools very, very frequently, I would say. Some Valley teams were just added the other day. Can't remember exactly who, but hey, check them out. There's at least 100 schools on that site by now. It is the best. They are Home Field Apparel. Go to homefieldapparel.com today to shop your school. If they don't have your school, shoot them a tweet at homefieldapparel on Twitter. You can get 15% off your first purchase of the most comfy collegiate apparel you'll ever own by going to homefieldapparel.com and using our promo code 3MW at checkout. It's home field. Wear one for the team. 3MW at checkout.
Love it, Kai. That's right. Home field. Okay, let's get into 3 minute thoughts. I'm gonna hog the ball, guys, just because my first thought is pretty broad, and relates back to last Saturday's NCAA Tournament Selection Committee bracket reveal, top 16. Just want to talk through some of the takeaways from that, maybe some things projecting forward before we get into some more specifics of both your two thoughts. But starting with, okay, I thought this was reasonable, Kai. Pretty much the 16 teams most people expected to be in there. Maybe some back and forth in terms of where teams specifically landed. But man, it's just kind of jarring to see the SEC with five of the top six teams. The top two seeds after having three one seeds were Tennessee and Texas A&M. There's a chance that every region has two SEC teams in its top four seeds. Like if Mizzou gets up there and either Mississippi or Mississippi State joins the top five plus Kentucky, boom, suddenly you have eight in the top 16. And
Yeah.
that's typically not something you see happen in this part of the bracketing.
It's insane. They're going to have to flex some bracket rules, and I'm sure some teams will get moved down in the S curve if that happens. But yeah, it's the best league maybe ever. On KenPom, the gap of the net rating in this conference between the second best conference, the Big 12, is enormous. It's as big as number 2 to number 4 and number 2 to number 5. It's just enormous. Great league. Top 16 reveal, Jim, I agree, was reasonable. I had no qualms with it.
Yeah, I didn't think anything was totally egregious. You still saw Houston on the two line, Matthew, which
I think that'll change.
I think at the time it made sense given their somewhat lack of Q1 wins top end, but their Big 12 schedule was very backloaded. They already picked up a huge one at Arizona that has them flirting with a one seed, and they've got more and more opportunities. Iowa State comes to town, Texas Tech revenge game on the road. There's, I would say, and I think the odds indicate this, that Houston more than likely to end up on the one line.
And they probably take Bama's spot.
No,
Is that
Bama's lock for 1.
So Auburn lock.
My opinion. You don't
Okay.
think so?
Bama's problem is their schedule. They could
Yeah,
lose to
that's
Florida,
my worry.
Tennessee, and Auburn again down the stretch, and
Yeah.
that
Those
would
locks
hurt
high.
them.
They have the second most Q1, Q2 wins. And I don't know.
Just the SEC thing, Texas, Vanderbilt, Oklahoma, Arkansas, and I guess maybe Georgia. Like this is where my problem with the SEC. How many of those teams do we want in the tournament, Kai? Do you want in the tournament? How many of those?
I think as many that deserve it. I'm not.
Oh,
I'm
I
not
want
one of
zero
these.
those
I'm not
teams.
one of
I want
these.
zero of those teams.
No,
Zero.
I disagree completely with the conference record thing. To be honest, like you're playing in the best conference in the league. Every team would go. Oklahoma 3-10 right now in the SEC. Yeah, not looking good. Still a great team. They've played freaking Auburn, Tennessee, Florida, and Missouri 4 of the last 5 games. Yeah, they might lose all those games. Like, look at the non-con, man. They were great. It's the whole season. It's the body of work, and that's why conference record's not on the team sheet, and it shouldn't be. I'm okay if they get in, but they're heading towards not getting in, Jim, with the record. It can't be like one game over 500.
I'm so on your side with this, Kai, where people are like, if they go 7-11 in their own conference, get them out. Like,
Silly.
What do you think strongly that somebody else would go 10-8 in this conference that you want in instead? Like that's what bums me out about it. Like if you switched in, UC Irvine just lost at home to Cal State Northridge. Do we think they're going 10-8 in the SEC? I can't get there as
No,
much as
but
I
think
love them in
But
majors.
UC San Diego would, Jim. Different
Sure.
operation.
Okay,
Down-
yeah,
down
they
in,
lost that
Southern
UC
Cal.
Riverside, but they I don't know.
Oh well, that's
Lost
the
in
Magpies
Seattle
beat
too.
everybody. Yeah, it was years ago.
It matters.
Yeah, so it's just here's my problem with the power conferences. I just think we're getting a lot of like this is yeah. So Texas, I'm more forgivable, but like Vandy, OU, Arkansas, and Georgia, I think there is when there's a clear non-con surge and a clear conference swoon. That's where I kind of have the fraudulent alarm bells going off in my head, and I just at the margin, right? If it's kind of a coin flip between that and a really good deserving mid-major or a really good deserving like like A10 team like VCU. I'd rather just have VCU. You know what I mean? Like that's where my biases.
Your point on Texas and Vanderbilt are good because they played nobody in the non-con. They have no good wins in the non-con. OU racked up like 4 or 5 Q1 wins. So they're just different teams.
Michigan, Arizona, Louisville, like locks, beat them all away from home. like it's hard to take that away. Oklahoma getting harder and harder to defend because they're not competing. They're not even
No, they're
remotely
getting
getting
blown out.
close
Yeah.
with good teams. And then the home loss to LSU was like, if you are on the bubble, you have to beat LSU at home, and weren't able to do that. So yeah, it's going to be interesting. They could end up with as few as 9, although Texas at least got the Kentucky win. Looks a little bit better for 10. But hey, that's not part of the top 16 reveal. Good tangent for the boys. Just one last scheduling thing I wanted to mention, and this kind of happens every year, but when there's no good teams out west and there's 2 first round sites out west, you end up getting teams like in the 4 seed level shipped out there. Arizona is really the only team west of Texas that's in the mix for a top 16 seed, top 4 seed, I guess, top 16 spot. When Gonzaga's not good, it really opens up those slots. So have fun to all the SEC teams that get shipped to Denver and what was the other one? Is
Seattle.
it Seattle? Seattle. Yeah, Kai, that's probably where Mizzou's going to be.
They should flex these more, in my opinion, but whatever. I know these are
Yeah.
decided years in advance. It's just like, come on, man. No one's good west of the Mississippi right now.
Yep.
Texas, not Mississippi. There's a couple good teams west of Mississippi. Missouri.
But yeah, lots of shuffling still to come in the Big Ten. After the reveal, Wisconsin rising, Michigan rising, Purdue lost 3 in a row since the reveal.
Kansas falling
So,
too. Yeah.
yeah, they will not be in the top 16. So yeah, it's a good peek, a good sneak peek, but nothing set in stone. Kai, let's go to you for your first thought.
Love it. Hey, let's stick with the tournament. I actually have 2 bracket thoughts, so heavy bracket episode here. My
Good.
question is 1 seed dominance, or do we expect some surprising runs, fellas? And I know we don't have a bracket yet. The hypothetical is hard to do. But my point is the top teams are really starting to separate themselves from the next group in net rating and KenPom. Recently, I think it was DraftKings. I could have the wrong book. They put up a prop, the field minus 180 or Auburn Duke plus 140 to win the national title. It's a good question. I think I'd take the field in that case, but Duke and Auburn are a clear 1-2 right now in KenPom. Houston has solidified itself as number 3 in KenPom, and then Florida and Tennessee are basically in that next tier, and then it drops really far. So do we expect those, call it 5 teams with Tennessee, I guess. Do we expect those 5 teams to dominate, make Final Four runs, or are there a smattering of other teams that can make a run, surprise title run? I listed some teams down, or listed some teams to talk about, but my first question is, Jim, 1 seed dominance?
I bet we get at least 2 1 seeds in the Final Four.
Mm.
I feel okay about that. I did see with that Duke in Auburn versus the field. I think it was Matt Marquardt and Matt Winnick were going back and forth. Like one of them compared it to 2021 when Gonzaga and Baylor had like clearly separated themselves, and I do not think that's this year. Like I think
agree.
there are 2 awesome teams, but I think the other teams in
Tier
that
2.
level are much better than they were that year. Yeah.
Yes. That's my exact point. I think just to like, there's a
Go
ton of there are a ton of really, 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 really good teams this year. I think there's a lot more threats for the 1 seeds. And Jim, I know you're working on that article behind the scenes teaser, but like comparing, Duke let's just say Duke and Auburn meet in the title game. And I want to discount because Houston's really good and Florida's awesome too. Like, let's just assume it's Duke and Auburn. I wonder what we're going to be talking about Duke and Auburn in terms of how they stack up with, I don't know, the Gonzaga Baylor teams of that year, right? Or the other champions of UConn. UConn's probably on its own tier, right? But where does Duke and Auburn stack up in the historical greatness of potential champions? Again, assuming they were one of those were to win it. I don't know, but I know that their challengers that they faced, I think, will be among the strongest or deepest of any that we've seen in the last decade. Like I said, just the teams 5 through 30 or 40, even 50 are as good as they've ever been. And that's a function just of how the games kind of change with NIL and the older experience and stuff like that. But I guess to answer your question, I think I'm with Jim. I think we get 2. But I think the other 1 seeds are going to have, I think like for Florida and for Houston or Tennessee or Alabama, whoever gets that, I think they're going to have 2 really good tests to get there. Really good tests.
Yeah, and I think you're right. The very good depth of teams after that top group.
I'm
Alabama,
calling it tier 2 very good, as best it's been in forever, in my opinion.
We saw Mizzou smoke Alabama, but Alabama's still a dangerous team. Top 5 offense in the country. Wisconsin's a top 10 offense in the country. Tanji Blackwell, I still don't really believe in them for some reason. I still have the non-sexy version in my head, but hey, maybe they're good enough. Texas Tech, kind of the same issue. All three of those teams are like weirdly not as great on defense as they have been in the past, but really good offensively. Iowa State's probably the most balanced team of the next group, top 20 offense and top 15 defense, but they've had past tournament struggles. We know Arizona has had past tournament struggles. It's basically Caleb Love. We'll see. And then Missouri, Jim, I think Mizzou has a great chance to crash the Final Four for the first time ever with their depth, with their experience. And then there's still like St. John's and Kentucky and Purdue and Maryland and Sparty, Gonzaga. There's so many good teams. So I would take the field if given or if made to in that bet, in that prop bet.
Yeah, I would too. And when I say two one seeds, I'm not saying it's going to be Duke and Auburn. One of those could go down, and you get Houston or Florida right now. Pretty likely. Kai actually just looked. Alabama's plus money to be a one seed. Maybe that's a wager
Really?
you're gonna look at. Yeah, but
Yeah, their predictives actually did fall below 6, so maybe not. Yeah.
could be part of it. Yeah, but I think we'll get two just because the teams are really really good at the top, but gonna be some gauntlets to get there. So I'm excited to see how it plays out. I don't think it's gonna be a chaotic tournament with like double digit seeds, but you could see some four seeds advancing or two seeds being, I hope we get a bunch of 1-2 games in the Elite Eight. That's kind of the
Yeah.
stinker take. I think we always like want the Cinderellas early, but the heavyweights late.
I want the best teams late, and that includes Mizzou. Thus ends my first thought, Matthew.
So so my thought real quick, it's just more of a statement. I think contextualizing the point about how I'm saying the tier 2 teams are better than they've ever been. The UC San Diego love is continuing to grow. They're sort of the mid-major darling of this season. I'm sure you've heard us talk about them at nauseum. I keep going back to the Wofford 2018 comparison because that's like the one just pure good, awesome, amazing mid-major story that it was a team that was actually analytically, top end 18th. They finished in KenPom after losing to Kentucky, a game they probably should have won had they just made like one single shot. So I keep going back to, and I put the side by side of this UC San Diego team and the Wofford team side by side. UC San Diego's up to 40 in KenPom right now. Wofford finished 18th. I feel semi-confident saying that I think this UC San Diego team is better than that Wofford team. And I think that's sort of a comparison. And maybe,
hard.
wow, really?
No way.
Okay.
Wofford team
I
is
have UC
awesome.
San Diego rated a point higher than I have that Wofford team. I think this UC San Diego team is going to, I think we'll revisit this conversation in a month and you'll be like, yeah, maybe you're right. This Trident team was awesome. Because they're playing in a Big West that's really, really, really good, better than the conference that Wofford dominated. And they're dominating it to the degree that Wofford did, if not more. I just think that they're had a lower starting point, so their analytic climb has been a steeper and longer climb, so they're not quite as high in KenPom. But again, I think they are as good as that Wofford team. There are just a lot of really, really, really good teams that are ahead of them in KenPom and that are actually probably better than UC San Diego that Wofford wasn't, fighting for in this stupid analytical ladder climb, I guess. So
Wofford ran
just
ran the table in the SoCon. UC San Diego's got 2 losses in the Big West.
yeah, but much better league.
Is it much
A
better?
little bit.
The
That was a
Big
good
West is
SoCon.
12th this year.
Really good
SoCon
SoCon.
was 13th that year.
They had
in-
2
in
NIT
KenPom's
teams.
SoCon was
conference
13th that year. Yeah, no,
Yeah.
this Big West is better. I'm sticking. I love this last night. I looked at my power ratings. I went back and massaged and made sure I had it stacked up. I think you're missing that. The 18 versus 40 is bothering you. I promise you. Go look at the teams from 39 to 20 that year and compared to this year.
Yeah, I'm not saying that.
Better teams this year.
Don't
Better
forget
teams
ratings
this year.
creep. Ratings creep as well, Matthew. Your ratings have
Yeah,
creeped
but
for
that's
the last 6 years.
but I think that's also partly reality, right? I think that's just that
Maybe.
there's just better teams now.
Maybe.
More really.
Respectfully disagree with that one though.
I think that SoCon had 4 top 100 teams, another team in the top 60. This Big West has nobody else in the top 100 besides Irvine. Like, I don't know. It's not quite. I don't think that SoCon was bad. The one mid major I'm surprised you're
wasn't
not
bad.
making any comparisons to is your boys, Wilbon, FAU 2023. Why no
I know
comparison to
they're
them?
in the AAC
Makes
now.
no
I feel like I
That was Conference
disqualify them.
USA. That was a mid
I
major.
know, but I feel like even Conference USA is like sort of in that fringy. Do I consider that a mid-major conference? But it is. You're right. I know. But I think people are also tired of hearing me talk about FAU, so I try to ignore that conversation when I can.
IU fan wants to bring up Dusty May again. What do you know? All right. Well, I hope UC San Diego makes it. And they actually do have like a okay chance at net large if they run the table to the Big West final. But It's probably going to take that, unfortunately. Just not a
Yeah.
lot of room for error. All right, my second thought is just a welcome back to some teams that are making, or some players, excuse me, that are making real impacts for the teams upon return. Kind of inspired by Micah Handlogton, the incredible comeback story at Florida, broke his leg gruesomely in the SEC tournament last year, left Florida a little shorthanded going into the big dance. They could not get a stop against Colorado, and now leads us to where we are today. It's especially huge to get him back with Alex Condon and Sam Alexis missing time in the front court for the Gators. You get some actual minutes for Handlogton to get acclimated. It's just not many teams at a 7 foot rebounding, shot blocking monster at this point in the year. The Gators to go with what some people call a top or the best or top two or three backcourt in the country. Florida is all the way legit number one seed title contender. So getting Handlogton back is great. A couple others worth mentioning. Liam McNeely's been back for a little bit for UConn. Will it be enough? He might be their best player. We'll see how things trend for the Huskies down the stretch. Milan Momcilovic is a big one to mention, considering Iowa State is 18-1 with him and went 3-4 without him. It's just not the same team without his shooting, his spacing. Kai, do you kind of buy that this version with Momcilovic of Iowa State is the like team that they were beforehand, like a one seed, or do you think there's some truth in the middle?
Maybe in the middle, Jim. I can't help but look at the schedule since Milan's been back. UCF, TCU, Cincinnati, and Colorado. And so for the lower tier Big 12 teams, or at least like bottom half, Kansas, Kansas State, Arizona previously, and at West Virginia in those losses without him. So truth is in the middle there. I still think this Iowa State team rocks. Again, like I said, one of the most balanced teams in the country. I think that will play well in the NCAA tournament.
Yeah,
Yep,
Jim,
and we'll
they're tier two, and that really good tier two.
do two. Okay, we'll briefly mention a big game they have coming up on Saturday in our preview section. Iowa State goes to Houston. Langston Love for Baylor has actually been awesome since returning, playing big minutes, averaging almost 15 a game. He matters a lot too because he's a big guard with some bulk to him. And the fact that they only have one big man now, they're playing a ton of small ball. You need a guy that can kind of scale down and play that small ball for, and that's what Langston Love has done. So shout out to him at Baylor. I still am a little skeptical of their long-term ceiling given their lack of size, but Love has been huge. And then Matt, Malik Brown for Duke had been back and making a huge impact as a passer, big time defender. But now he's out again with this dislocated shoulder. Expected to return this season. They said that very optimistic based on the MRI and the imaging. How important is Brown to Duke and their ultimate ceiling?
Yeah, very. I go back and forth because like, you just look at his numbers, they don't really jump off. Like I think if you don't watch Duke, you are like, come on, it's Duke. They got plenty of other dudes. They'll be just fine. And I kind of agree with that, but when you watch Duke play, I think it's very much an eye test impact guy with his I think he just provides an X factor matrix type defender that can be useful against elite matchups deep in March. And I think without him, they don't have that. That's what's tough.
And then kind of last one, they're not back yet, but Jackson Robinson and Lamont Butler for Kentucky. They've gotten some surprisingly impressive play from their freshmen. Trent Noah had a big game. Colin Chandler just had a big one against Vanderbilt. Travis Perry's been good on the ball because they needed point guard badly. But the best version of Kentucky is with those guys out there. A little more scoring pop. Butler is such a dog defensively and obviously has been to the national title game with San Diego State. How different do you frame Kentucky without them versus with them when you're looking at a postseason run?
With them, Jim, I think they are a title contender. Yes, I said it. I think
Oh,
people forget how good this team was in the non-con. They beat Duke. They beat Gonzaga basically at Gonzaga. It was a semi away, but yeah, this team is like ceiling, absolutely title contender with
Yeah,
them.
beat Florida, beat Tennessee twice. I agree.
Beat Florida,
No, I'm
beat
with you.
Tennessee twice.
I think it's still
Yeah.
tier two. It's high. It's
Yes.
still a tier two team. Back to my comparison, but at the upper echelon of that tier two, knocking on the ceiling.
yeah. So yeah, both them and Iowa State fully healthy. Knocking on the door of Matthews tier one, but not quite there. But yeah, it's just good to see these guys getting back, and we hate injuries, so let's have everybody as fully healthy as possible heading to the postseason. All right, Kai, your second thought.
Well, I said it's all bracket. We're going right back to it. We're talking about the eights and nines. The 8 and 9 seeds, this might be the best bunch of 8s and 9s, at least as of February 21st when we're projecting the bracket ever. Currently, per bracket matrix, the 8 seeds, Oregon, Creighton, UConn, and Baylor. So you have a two-time national title winner in UConn, who was top 10 preseason. You have Creighton, who has a top center in the sport and a top 30 defense. You have Altman in March for Oregon, always makes a deep run. And you have Baylor, who is a top 15 offense and can actually beat anybody in the country on any given night, despite the injury to Josh O. Just an insane group of 8s. On the 9 line, you have New Mexico right now, 22-5, top 30 offense, fantastic point guard in Donovan Dent. You have Gonzaga, who is literally in the top 10 in KenPom. The fact that they might get an 8 or 9 is just bonkers to me. I think they'll probably rise up with more wins.
Yeah, remember when Loyola Chicago was 10th in KenPom and got an 8 and beat Illinois?
And Wichita State as well that one year. They were top 10, got an 8 seed. Utah State, they have a top 15 offense. In Nebraska.
And that zone, preparing
that
for
zone
Utah State's zone and short prep.
And then Nebraska, super experienced, probably the least fun, sexy of the group here, but still a really good team. The point is, guys, UConn and Gonzaga, for instance, being on these lines, and even Baylor, Creighton, it's crazy. And these 1 seeds are awesome, but there's going to be a landmine every step of the way to make the Final Four, which is why I think the field, going back to that argument, is the much better bet than Auburn/Duke.
Yeah, it's part of the rising crop of like the top 30 is so good that part of these teams are in that region or in that realm of the national rankings, and they're all the way down there on the S curve. It just kind of ramps up my excitement for the tournament, Kai. But
yeah,
one of the most tournaments I've been the most excited for in a while, especially because UConn just like bullied their way through it the last 2 years. I feel like there's a lot more mystery to this one.
As do I. Okay, Matt, short thought to you, Mr. International Man of Mystery.
Yes, I just want to highlight. I'll run through a list of names. We talked off season. I think it was actually last summer, heading into the last season, about our skepticism on leaning too much on international prospects and sort of the learning curve it takes for a lot of these guys to come over here and be effective right away, especially in a rapidly aging landscape where there's old dudes, big, strong, grizzled adults in the room. Jim, we had our boy Benny on to kind of break that down and talk about how he's kind of his experience coaching and sort of the learning curve it takes. And then lo and behold, this year, just like we've seen a lot of, some of these are freshmen, by the way, we've seen this freshman class really surprise us. We've seen a lot of the international prospects, especially big men, international mystery big men, I'm calling this thought, make monster impacts on like legitimate, tournament title, at least deep tournament contending teams. And I think it starts with the V6 brothers. Yeah, I can't say that. I don't know why I had this as a thought. I can't say any of these names. This is a terrible idea for me to put this as a thought. Yeah, thank you.
I love it. I love it.
Arkansas and Illinois, and I think both fan bases have realized how important each one of them mean to their team. Like Illinois can't rebound or defend the rim without. And then Arkansas, Calipari, it took him 3 months to realize that he's probably their best player and he should be starting him.
Until he went over 10 at Auburn and almost
he went over 10. He had a tough Auburn's front line, different beast. That was maybe the international like learning curve, jagged upward wall that what I was alluding to. I love Cement at SMU. I know SMU is probably not on anyone's radar. He's really good.
Bubble?
He is he's kind of bubble-ish right now.
Yigitoglu, I believe. The Turkish.
That's probably right.
Turkish, yes. And we talked about Ade Mara for UCLA and his emergence after kind of a tough freshman year. And then the former UCLA fellow big, Burke over at Nebraska, who's currently out right now, but he's been a monster for Nebraska ball.
Yeah, Mars had the flu too, which I think
he's had the flu recently.
That's part of that Minnesota loss. Illinois loss.
Yeah, Cronin kind of shrugged that off, but I think that was a real factor in that matchup. And then Vlad Golden, obviously, FAU, Michigan, Russian, Kai, the Igor Milicic, and Igor Demin for BYU, awesome. The one I love is the Frenchman Letang for Dayton. I know Dayton's kind of fallen off, but I think he's going to be a stud. Keep an eye on him. Arizona, I should mention the Gonzaga guys, but the Arizona St. Mary's connection, right? Tommy Lloyd, the Morauskas, the one for St. Mary's. I think I've only seen him play his best games this season. He's been phenomenal for them.
He's awesome.
He's terrific. So congrats to Bennett for scooping that one up. He's been terrific. Arizona obviously has their collection of foreign bigs. I just wanted to kind of point out it's been a really, Jim. We've talked about how the dual big teams have really found maybe a quasi inefficiency in roster construction, but I think a lot of those have been comprised of these more skilled international bigs that I think is becoming the prototype for what bigs will look like the next 5 to 10 years, as we've already seen the NBA start to establish what that standard is. So nice job,
Yeah, you
foreigners.
mentioned Arizona. I mean, Arizona lost Krivas, who was like everyone's favorite breakout pick, and they're like, "That's okay. We've got Henry Vasar, our next one on the assembly line." He finally just started his first game against Baylor. Like, I don't, they've been bringing him off the bench behind Awaka, and I was happy to see him start. Ken Pom game MVP that game. He's really really good too. And I just wanted my first memory of Latang, Letang, the French Dayton guy, comes in against North Carolina and just hits like two threes immediately. Like this guy's 7'1" and like just oh yeah, I kind of just confidently shoot as a freshman big man. He hasn't quite been as smooth as that looked initially all year, but yeah, the upside's immense.
Oh, two more. Sorry, Philip Baravis, Philip B.
Borovichinen.
Thank you.
I watched the New Mexico game to get that right recently.
Yep, he's been terrific. And then if I'm going to talk UC San Diego, I have to mention uh, their big guy who, what's his name? Capich,
For UC San Diego,
Nordine
Kopich, I
Capich.
think. Yeah, I don't know, but yeah, he
So
D2
yeah,
transfer. He's been great.
he's been great. He is from
Austria.
Austria, Kai, known basketball hotbed, of course. Anyway, these guys are from everywhere. They're good. They're skilled. And again, I think they're kind of starting to, as we've seen some of the, NBA, it's like, oh, the international guys are eating our lunch. It's like, okay, well, they have a pretty skilled package. And I think they're starting to, I think, skip the learning curve that we've seen that in prior years. So done. Thought over.
Every
Boom.
pronunciation was perfect. You got none wrong.
How do you, Ivisic? I've heard multiple on the broadcast, so it's
I've heard
confusing.
multiple too, like on different broadcasts, so it's hard to know
I hate
100%
that I
for
say
sure.
names wrong because when you hear someone say it wrong, it just sounds so hack, and I'm just like, I swear I know this guy. I watched him play. I understand. I know ball. I just don't know words. It's very.
The Tommy kid, the Tom kid from Illinois, the Thomas Slop kid.
Yeah, that's don't do that. All right, gonna get into some quick previews here. Again, detailed previews will be on
Oh,
our
Jim, Bet Loicton. How do we not mention UC Irvine,
Ain't
our guy?
really.
like.
Loicton. Thank you,
I'm
Kai.
just
Okay,
mad because he got posterized to lose the game last night or to clinch the game. Marcus
by
Adams
Marcus
Jr.
Adams. Hey,
Yep,
Kansas could use Marcus Adams right now. Just a
sure
thought.
could. Okay, yeah, previews. Remember Saturday show, 10 a.m. Central, to go through all kinds of betting previews. So we're just going to kind of give picks, maybe one matchup angle or something that intrigues us. But Friday night, Michigan and Michigan State, big one for the Big Ten. Kai, I kind of like Sparty on the road. Michigan just has not been convincing. Hasn't won a game by more than four since January 12th. So I'm buying Michigan State there. But what do you think?
It's Michigan State tonight for me, Jim. I agree. Michigan's been playing with fire all year. Thin margins are catching up. Michigan State's a very good team. I like Sparty in this game.
I like
Matthew?
Sparty as well. I know we talked about when will teams follow the Woody blueprint and zone Michigan State more often. I don't. I think that's maybe been a little bit overplayed. I still think Michigan State has good shooters, and when they start hitting shots, I kind of put them in the St. John's tier of like, look out, this team could be really good. This is the only
Yep.
missing piece is they haven't made shots yet. So yeah, I like Sparty here tonight.
They just put Jace Richardson into the starting lineup. I think that
Who
helps
can?
the
Yeah,
shooting
It's quite good.
and yeah, if you zone them offensive rebounding, they're a great two-way rebounding team. All right, Saturday, Tennessee at Texas A&M to start the day, and then later in the day, Kentucky at Bama. Two games that are going to have a difference in total points of like 56, 55, like 126 per Ken Pom for Tennessee A&M, 182 for Kentucky and Alabama. It's like almost a different sport. Matthew, for either of actually for both of those games, what are you looking at?
I like Kentucky at Bama. I actually think Bama. I'm not going to take any away from what Mizzou did against Bama. I think Bama's defense though is starting to. My skepticism is rising slowly, and Kentucky, um, with a little bit of that revenge going back on the road, I think Kentucky wins that game, Kai, outright.
Wow.
Yes, yeah, I
Wow.
do, and I do like A&M here at home. I can't get a read on either of these teams in terms of their kind of up and down inconsistency is, but I do like A&M here at home, slightly in there. Stronger conviction about Kentucky going into Crimson, into Tuscaloosa and winning that game, though.
If
Alabama lose 3 in a row?
yeah,
What?
They
I
haven't led in 80 minutes, Jim.
that's surprising.
Auburn, Mizzou.
I lean towards Bama, especially if Kentucky still got the lingering stuff with Robinson and Butler. Lean Bama. Tennessee for me. I think Tennessee has the physicality and kind of ability to defend A&M on the glass and match their physicality, and I think that's a problem when a team can do that for the Aggies, who are not a good offensive team. I think Tennessee gets it done.
Yeah, I kind of like that. I think I'm Tennessee. I think Kentucky keeps that game close, but just the reliance on all three freshmen without Robinson, without Butler, I think against a sort of desperate team off 2 losses, that's going to show up a little bit more at Coleman Coliseum than it did at Rupp Arena against Vandy. So I like Bama in that one. Missouri at Arkansas. Kai, do we stick a fork in Mr. Calipari, or
Hope
is
so.
this the letdown spot?
Man, the spot is definitely Arkansas, Jim, but I've watched these teams play a lot. Missouri, Missouri,
Missouri.
Missouri and Mizzou is categorically better than Arkansas this year. Categorically, they are much better. Will they be as hyped as the other games? I don't know. And again, I'll go back to it. Now Mizzou is number 2 in 3-point attempt rate in the SEC, but number 1 in free throw attempt rate, number 2 in 3-point attempt rate. You're going to win a lot of games. You're going to win a lot of games.
Yeah,
Mizzou, I hope wins this game.
I fear this version of Arkansas with Nelly kind of sending more to Alpha and them playing through Ivasic, and he can't play as bad as he did at Auburn. So Matt, I'm nervous. I'll just say that.
Yeah, Arkansas has played 6 good games in a row, basically, right? Went at UK, I know a little tainted. You won at Texas. Bama, I know you're down big, but you came back and lost by 4. Dominated LSU mostly. Actually, I guess they pulled away late in that game, didn't they? A&M competitive-ish, and then Auburn competitive. Yeah, I mean, they played. It's going to be a close game. I think it's actually a close game. It's going to be like a very annoyingly close game.
It'll be close. It'll be close. Yeah.
Yep. Okay, real quick. Iowa State at Houston. This one's a 9-point spread at Ken Palm because Houston's so freaking high up, but it is a top 10 matchup. Kai, does Houston win, or does Iowa State with Chilovich back?
I think Houston wins, but boy, Iowa State, I take +9 for sure. Yeah, it's a lot of points for a team that's really good.
Yeah, agreed there. Iowa State's got the guards to hopefully handle the Houston pressure, seemingly have bigs to somewhat battle on the glass. I saw JoJo Tugler only played 8 minutes last game and got worried, but no, he fouled out in 8 minutes. So it was
Iowa State will shoot a lot of free throws. They'll shoot a lot of free throws.
That's a good point. Yeah, even on the road. Matthew, Illinois Duke, Madison Square Garden. This Duke they scheduled this because they knew the ACC sucked and they wanted an actual good game in February.
It's such a diss to the ACC. I love how Duke just is like separating themselves from the ACC. Like, we did this as a one-off because the rest of you stink. I think it's great.
They had to talk to the league office, be like, give us a weekend off so we can schedule this game.
Or just add better teams. I think Duke smacks Illinois here. I do. This is sort of a tough game for Duke where you could just Illinois' uniqueness could surprise them, but I just think the way Duke's defending right now is pretty damn impressive. As unorthodox as Illinois can be to guard.
Best team they've played since December, Illinois.
Especially coming off the Virginia game, right? You go from Virginia to Illinois, it's like, whoa, it's kind of a shell shock style there.
Yeah. Yep. 2 games that are big for their respective conference title races. St. Mary's, Gonzaga. Always got to mention it quick here. I think Gonzaga gets their revenge. Kai, what do you
I think Gonzaga wins. Yeah, and if they don't, I'm really worried about their tournament prospects.
Yeah, they're gonna be like an 11 seed. Have fun. Yeah. Matthew, St. Mary's or Gonzaga, real quick.
I guess I go with Gonzaga. I think I'm convinced St. Mary's is the better team. I think Gonzaga wins this game. Do you guys accept that notion?
Interesting. Yeah.
I mean, I think
so. Rematch at WCC
better,
tourney.
But yeah,
Yale's win the rubber match, says Matt. George Mason at VCU. This is basically for the A10 title. Super low total. VCU -9 at Ken Palm, so it's not as big of a coin flip game, but I think VCU handles their business. George Mason's been playing with fire basically all season.
9's a crazy.
I think it's close. It's very close.
Take George Mason as a dog. Yeah.
Very Sunday, close. Just for Matthew, Purdue, Indiana. got anything for us, Hoosiers? You going to stand up and beat your arch rival to get back in the tourney picture, or no?
No games at home, as I mentioned. Indiana at home is more pumpkiny. I think Purdue's pissed off that they flirted with Indiana the first time around. I think Purdue wins handily here.
I think they win
And
too.
Purdue
Not
is,
not handily. I think comfortably. I don't know,
Yeah.
7, 8.
Yeah.
yeah, Purdue has also lost three in a row. That's a tough spot for IU to be in. Like they're chomping at the bit. They just lost to the three teams that are like around them in the conference standings. It could be a big time
I,
boiler
Purdue's
effort there.
youth needs to like. That's sort of where I think this Purdue, the buck needs to stop with them. They're a little too. I mean, I love like again, I love Cox. I think he's my. I mean, literally my boy. But he's like the upside's like hitting me in the face as I watch him. But they need to be more consistent because I know Braden Smith's been awesome, but he's not like a. He can't carry a team at this top 10 at a top 10 level. He needs help.
Number 3
And then the
Ken Player of the Year, Braden Smith.
wow, there you go.
He's been great.
The last big environment we got to mention Sunday, St. John's hosting UConn. This is going to be a crazy packed Madison Square Garden with the way the UConn fans travel and live in New York City. Kai, spread definitely. I would think the Huskies keep it closer than 8, and maybe it won't be 8 with McNeely back in there. I kind of think there's a chance UConn wins outright. Like, I know Patino has been awesome against
Oh,
Hurley, but it just the limited ceiling of the St. John's offense scares me. UConn could turn it over a billion times again, but
Yeah.
we'll see.
Yeah, they turned it over 22 times in the first matchup. They're up 14 in that game. It never got within or outside of 8. I think they can hang around. So I would take them on the spread. Jim, they could win outright, but more spread bet for me. Johnny's
big. I think this is actually my most excited game to watch of the entire weekend. I think the crowd will be that good. I totally jump with you. Like I think the UConn St. Johnny fan base is colliding in the God and will be terrific.
Yep, that is must watch on Sunday, especially with no football, folks. Get in on your college hoop Sunday. There's always the great CBS games after professional bull riding on Sunday morning. So, yeah, tune in. All right, that's it for previews. Let's knock out some quick reviews and send the people on their way.
Matt with the Boston accent for Madison Square Garden.
Got it.
God, that's is New York be Garden?
Probably. 2
lower,
reviews
I guess. Yeah.
from USA Red Devil. Best college basketball podcast on the web. I gain a ridiculous amount of college basketball knowledge every single pod. Best in the business, in my opinion. Thank you. Concise, great
Thank
review.
you. Yes. Cheers.
And then a second review, very long and nice and sweet. And I really like this review. Big Red Storm fan. He says
Wait, I thought that was the review.
No.
This podcast is very long and nice and sweet, and I like it.
This review is very nice. Big Red Storm fan. So St. John's. This review is long overdue, but thanks to the witty Matt Cox, who sure knows his way to a Cornell grad's heart. I couldn't procrastinate any longer. In fact, I've owed you guys a 5-star review since I started listening back in the 2018-19 season. Perhaps Jim will remember his Meaning of March article and our subsequent email exchange, which I am shocked to learn is now 6 years old. He said, hooked on the pod.
Flies.
It does. Oof. He said, hooked on the pod back then and been struggling to tell Matt and Kai apart ever since. Yes, he's not the only one. In all seriousness, hope you appreciate what a special place you guys have in the college basketball landscape. Can all agree on why this sport is the best thing going. Yes, good. You guys get it, blah, blah, blah. You know the game better than anyone. Wow, I love that. Excellent comment, high praise. Keep up the superb work, and I would welcome the chance to buy a round. If you're ever in the New York City area, go Big Red, go Red Storm. Questions at the end here. What's the ceilings for my beloved Johnnies? What's it going to take for the old alma mater, Cornell, to finally break through the first round of Ivy madness? Oof.
Yale's too good.
I'll take the same. Yeah, this year Yale is, but I don't know. I think they made the right hire with Jock.
Yeah, I agree.
There's just internal promotion behind Earl. I think their future's solidly bright there. St. John's ceiling. I think they can make a Final Four. I think the floor is really high because the defense and the offensive rebounding. I just worry that the shooting, I'm not worried about it against like 13 seed in the first round, but against a 1 seed in the Final Four, if you're playing Duke or Houston, that's where I think it bites them. So I'm not sure they can win a title, but I think they can definitely make the Final Four.
I'm going to agree with that, Jim. A sort of mini Houston, except that they can't shoot like Houston, and that's the problem. That's the issue. But Final Four ceiling for me as well. Cornell, Matt, you don't think they can beat Yale?
I don't think so.
Yeah.
I don't this year. Yale's I don't I watched Yale a couple times now, and I'm not saying they're better than last year, but they've been more dominant than
It's
last year for sure.
yeah,
I don't get
it's in the ballpark. Matt, if
so.
St. John's played Texas A&M, what would happen?
We saw. I mean, what happened when A&M played Houston? There was just bodies flying everywhere. It was like the most fun. It was like a circus trapeze act of people flying everywhere, and it was just crazy. I would like a repeat of that game. That game was awesome. It was about one of the best games in the tournament last season.
Yeah, two awful shooting teams that are going to savage each other on the offensive glass. That would be an
Wait, that was
entertaining
last year, right?
war. Yeah,
Yeah,
last year, but it
last
was
year.
like a
Yeah.
high scoring game. It went to overtime,
Right. It
but
was because the
not
pace was
really.
flying. That's why I think it'd actually be an up and down, fast paced game. So I think it sort of adds to the even though the shooting is not going to be great. I think it's a fun pin. It's like a pinball type game.
But hey, Big Red Storm fan, thank you for that review. That was extremely kind. We appreciate it, and it's always cool to get that kind of affirmation. You know, we got egos. It's
Yeah,
good to
sure
get
do.
them stroked a little
Yeah.
bit. Yeah. All right, that is it for this week. Thank you, folks, for tuning in. Another Friday morning pod in the books. We'll be back Saturday morning on YouTube at 10 a.m. Central. Tune in there for the Best Bet Show if you're looking for that. If not, then well, hey, we'll see you back here next week, same time, same YouTube, same spot in your podcast app. Thanks for tuning in. Enjoy the weekend of hoops.